Hello everyone, welcome to the food production class. Today we are going to learn about the pastries. So most of pastries are made with the combination of flour, fats and liquid when we bind together, okay, in the different types of method. Okay, the texture and flavor and the color of the pastries will be tremendously depends on the what ingredient and proportion you are using it. Okay, so let's talk about the types of pastries. Okay, the types of pastry are the four types of pastries are the short crust pastry, puff pastry, or also called laminate pastry, choux pastry and hot water pastry. Okay, the short crust pastry is a pastry often used for the base for the tart and quiche and pie also. Okay, it doesn't puff. Okay, it's not a flaky, it's like a, okay, like hard bread. Okay, it doesn't puff during the baking because it usually contains no sugar, no leavening agent. Okay, it is possible to make shortcut pastry with the self-rising flour. Okay, however, the shortcut pastry can be used to make both sweet and the savory items also, like apple pie, lemon meringue, or chicken pie also. Next is the puff pastry or laminated pastry. Okay, in the baking, puff pastry is a very light, flaky, or it's also called a flaky because it very layer in that. Okay, leaving pastry combines several layers of the fat which is in solid state. In a raw form, puff pastry is like a dough which is spread with a solid fat and repeated folded and rolled out. Okay, means first we make a dough, when spread and make the layer, again we rolled and make the layer of that. So that is kind of process we do repeatedly. Okay, to you use to produce a unfermented pastries. Okay, it is sometimes called water dough or that tempeh. Next is a choux pastry, is also called in French a pâté de choux. It is a very light pastry dough used to make a profit rolls, okay, crumbles, French crullers, okay. So it contains only water, butter, flour and eggs, okay, like Yorkshire pudding. But instead of raising agent, it's a highly moisture content cream, okay, cream steam during the cooking of the puff pastry. Next is the hot water pastry. This is also known as the cooked pastry, which is seldom of used these days. Means it's rarely used in now the practice. It is a lean dough and made by the cooking the flour. Okay, cooking the flour with salt and the little fat in the water to make a paste. Okay, this paste is used to line the side to pie tins. Okay, using the hands of the apply of the mixture, the filling has been placed instead the inside the tin and then the covered with the paste. Okay, after baking the dough often discarded, it was the more like a protective layer over the filling. So this is the watercress pastry. Now we will talk about the different preparation of the different pastries. First we talk about the preparation of the short crust pastry. There are two methods in the short crust pastry. First is the rub-in method and second is the cream-in method. So first we will talk about the rub-in method. The rub-in method, the proportion of the fat and flour, means what flour we using, and the fat means could be a lard, our marzipan, our butter. Okay, the proportion is 1 to 2, means the flour will be double than a fat. The weaker flour is used to absorb less water, so we prefer to be heavyweight flour, so we can absorb more water in that. The refrigerated fat is rubbed into a flour until it resembles breadcrumbs. Means when we mix the flour and the fat, we try to make a resemble like breadcrumbs. This ensures that the fat is evenly disappeared and all the particles of flour are coated with the fat. That decrease the absorb the water level. The salt and sugar dissolved into a little chilled water and then is added to the that flour. The mixture is kneaded lightly, then the fingertips from the smooth plastic paste. We kneaded that with the flour till the when we get the mix up together of all this, and add the liquid is at once at the flour. Okay, mean gradually we addition the liquid, so we get the even texture. And okay, now we'll talk about the creaming method. The creaming method means the proportion of sugar to flour is fat and flour, means we also add the sugar in earlier also. So 1 2 3, that is the proportion of the creaming method. Cream the fat with the sugar, means we dissolve the sugar and add the egg in that. The flour is then folded and kneaded lightly so the soft dough. Now that the two methods which talk about, rubbing method and creaming. Now we talk about preparation of the choux pastry. Choux pastry as the proportion of the 1:1 ratio of fat and flour. Okay, then when fat and water boil together, we add the flour in that and mix and cooked together in a low flame. It is then removed from the flame and eggs are added gradually to the mixture until it mix dropping consistency. Then it is piped in on baking tray and baked immediately. Next is the preparation of hot water pastry. The proportion in the hot water pastry of fat and flour is 1:3, means the water and fat will be equally, but the flour will be 3 times of the fat. When we heat the fat and water together, we add the flour and knead that flour. After adding the flour in the fat and water, we need that to become a soft dough, and eggs may be or not be added, so that depends on the optional subject. The pastry is while still warm and pliable, which is going to be a bake. The preparation of the for pastry, it could be a very longer procedure and required more concern about we can say attention on that. Preparation of base dough with the flour, salt and a small portion of shortening and the liquid. After the chilling the 30 minutes, the cream roll in the fat and keep aside, means we keep rolling on the fats and keep, means we not melted fat or not in the hardened form. Okay, the roll out the dough and the rectangular shape and the thickness. Okay, we spread the fat on the sheet and the divide roll in fat into 3 parts, apply on part of the dough and leaving in one margin around edges. Okay, the fold the both ends of the center and shut it like a book fold, means earlier we spreaded that and we fold that two edges, two corners of the dough into inside. Okay, and they repeat this rolling folding with the other two portion and roll in the fat in the chilling between folding. Then we keep repeating about this procedure, and after the chilled we use it as a required. Okay, now we will talk about the role of each ingredient of the in pastry. Okay, so when we make a pastry with lots of major ingredients, so first we'll talk about the flour. The flour used in the pastry making is weak or medium strong. Okay, whatever flour we using, it depends on the how the pastry will make. If you using a weak flour in the shortcut pastry, will not be able to make a good pastry. So that depends on the what kind of flour we using. This type of flour means medium strong flour or weak flour requires a long fermentation. Okay, so it has to be a tolerance to the extended work on the bench, means the flour could not be get overloaded, because it have the tolerance with the longer fermentation and especially to the when we do the kneading on that. Okay, especially as it's like a puff pastry we are making, because it's required the much more procedure again and again repeated. Okay, now next ingredient is shortening. It could be a fat or ladder, butter, marzipan was probably the first fat used in the pastry making. Okay, lard is the first fat which is using, but after the pure butter gives the pastry as a rich and creamy flavor and the color. Okay, so the most of baker use the combination of the butter and the hard margin to achieve a balance of good buttery color and the flavor with the short. Okay, flaky texture means in the first pastry is provided by the margin. Okay, unsalted butter also used and the preferred because low water content. Okay, so that can be again salt can be controlled in the liquid is called whatever water or milk we are using in that. Okay, most pastry bound with water, although milk also used in that. Okay, the fresh milk is acceptable in the use in the formula. Sugar, it is used to be both sweeten the final pastry and the create a crispy texture to that. A teaspoon or 2 spoon of sugar added to the savory dough because the sugar used in the white granulated type. Okay, the eggs are added to the richness, to the texture and the flavor. Okay, because they help in the bind all the ingredients together. Yeast is content to increase the pastry dough. Okay, when we try to do fermentation and rise the dough, we add the yeast, which is already in those pastry which is high sugar content. Okay, spice and additives is also a sidekick to the pastries. Okay, the little grated orange or lemon rind should be adjust the right flavor to your pastry. Okay, so when we use sometimes vanilla and the almond to be enhance the dough, and the same time we use the spices also, that are the ingredient which is used in the pastry making. Now we will talk about the take caring while we baking or making a pastry. Okay, so what point we should be take care while we preparing a pastry? Handling pastry as possible as, okay, means the more that pastry is handled, means how much we are going to be handled, means much more work on that. Okay, so it becomes the ideally pastry should be handled quickly, means we have to be done, we not wait to that. Okay, and handle quickly and lightly to avoid the toughening and drying out and hardening, because we have to be make handle pastry as little as possible, means we have to be given much more time to the pastry, so it can't be dry or it can't be a tough and hard. Okay, otherwise the product will be not good. The more pastry is handled, the less messable and responsive it becomes. Okay, keep pastry cool with the cool hands, means all ingredients are using in that okay pastry which required to be lot heat resistant. Okay, so the introducing of heat from your hands is major reason to toughening of the pastry, means much more of rubbing of the butter, so butter get heated and that not perfect result will come. Much more water, or we can say the flour we needed, or we giving the much more heat to that pastry, that product will not become to hot. And also transfer the oil, it also best used to pastry in the cool kitchen. If you usually see that all the bakery and confectionery part are always do in the air conditioner or the control room temperature, that's why, because that heat can be destroy your product. Okay, so they are also include in the pastry. Okay, now the keep the fat cool. Again, whatever the butter or fat we using or shortening using, it's some other, okay, it could be cool, means that the temperature of that fatting a lot should be high. So okay, so because whenever it got to be melted and never give the right texture to the product. Okay, so it suggests to removing the refrigerator from the one before the using. Okay, so that best take care point is whenever we require to use of that kind of fat, we used to be take care from the 1 hour before the using. Okay, so it not going to be too hard and too soft, so it becomes very easy to use. Go easy on the fat, means whenever we using the fat, we have to not to be tempered with the, okay, means we are not overdone with the shortening, so it's going to be a melt. Okay, too much fat in the pastry can be compared with the filling and overwhelm the flavor. Okay, right, keep the liquid at minimum, means whatever milk and water we use, okay, don't going to be overpower. Okay, it ruin your pastry. It always be best to do little liquid and adjust, okay, according to pastry, means don't add the whole liquid in advance. Okay, just enough milk and water should be added to allow the pastry to stick together. Okay, set aside and standing and resting time for pastry whenever we make. Okay, it's not okay, so it is not good to make a pastry and attempt to use a straight way, means it's not like that you try to do making and make it not giving the rest to the pastry. Okay, if you are in a hurry, you will find that pastry is going to be harder to roll, and that pastry that is produced is not going to be a better result on that. So about 20 minutes is the recommended time for the standing, and the reason behind that, the gluten in the flour is given an opportunity to raise or practice elasticity. Okay, so the dough making it's easier to roll, that's why we do the resting to the pastry. Learn the some rolling techniques. Rolling technique usually used in the flaky pastry when we make. Okay, so whenever we use the stretchy right to when we require to stretch the pastry. Okay, so instead of rolling the bit more, we don't tempt to the pastry. Okay, the pastry will reward by the shrink. So during the cooking, instead of rolling the width of required, when rolling, always roll the edges of the pastry from the center. Okay, whenever we roll to first the edges to from edges to the center, not center to the edges. Okay, and don't roll over the edges too much more. The edges going to be a very thin. Add light glazes. Light glazes means whatever we glaze use, like water or what you can say egg wash, so it is give the color to the pastry. But now too much glaze we need to use. Okay, otherwise going to be a very heavy in weight and give the sogginess to the pastry. So that's all about the uh, uh, take caring point we have to take in the pastry making. And we also discuss about the role of the pastry. The difference between the all the pastries are major depend on the proportion of the ingredients, whatever we use. Okay, that give the difference from each and every pastry, and the technique we are using give the. If you can ask in the what is the difference between shortcut pastry and the hot water, or we can say choux pastry, that depends on the majorly in ingredient and the proportion. Okay, the in the choux pastry we use we boil the fat and water together and add the flour. After that, between the shortcut pastry, we add the fat and flour together. So that is the different method we using, and the proportion of the ingredient make the difference between each and everything. The use of the pastry as making it the dessert and the pastries. Okay, it could be uses savory dishes also, our okay sweet item also we use the uses of that pastry. The temperature of the baking, the temperature ideally is different from each and every pastry. Okay, if we baking a same temperature for the laminate pastry and the choux pastry, so it's going to be very difficult on the one temperature. You cannot cook the each and every pastry, because choux pastry has a creamy flavor. Okay, very liquidy thick consistency, so it is baking in the low temperature, and the laminate pastry is going to high temperature. So that is all in that video. We discuss all about the types of pastries and uses and the method of preparation. Okay, and the other point is what role of each ingredient in the pastry, and the points should be taken care of the pastry. Thank you very much for that.